Hiring an Expert, Part 2 of 2. Of course, I'm Scott Conway, PhD, JD, and I am one of the experts that I'm talking about in this, and I'll talk about some of the things I've done. In the case of all 12 of these, I've done them. I mean, some of the 11 developed because I was applying number 12. And we're going to talk about alternatives to just paying fees. So 12 alternatives to cash. 12 alternatives, 12 ways to pay an expert without having to necessarily shell out the cash. Now, in my particular case, at the time I'm recording this, so I mean, if you're here live, you already know I'm a $10,000 a day expert. But if you're listening to the audio, or if you're watching the video, I might be more expensive by the time you hear this. I mean, you know, who knows? But as of right now, but what if you don't have $10,000? You want my services, you want me to come to your company, you want me to come to your organization, but you don't have that kind of money. That you've seen the kind of things I do, you've seen what I teach, you've seen how I teach it, you really want to know this stuff, you really want to have it infused into your organizational culture, into your department, into your corporation, into your resort, into your cruise line. But you just can't afford to pay that much money. Well, what do you do? Well, fortunately, there's about, a dozen different alternatives. You can answer the question of how can you get a higher price expert when you don't quite have the budget to pay for that expert. And another side of this is if you are an expert, now I know this doesn't apply to anyone in the room right now, but because, presumably some people will be watching the video, listening to the audio at some later point in time. If you are an expert, so, directly to you, and you know what you're worth, and whatever it is you're worth, the problem you have is not everyone you want to work with or wants to work with you can afford your fees. So we'll take me, for instance. Say I'm a $10,000 a day expert. And that's typically what my contract would work out to, is about $10,000 a day for my individual services. Now, if you want me to show up with a team, of course, that's going to be more, but we'll just talk about me personally. If I'm worth $10,000 a day, and I start taking $2,000 a day jobs, and I keep taking $2,000 a day jobs, what happens to my value? Am I still considered a $10,000 a day expert who's just working at a discount? Or do I start to get perceived as a $2,000 expert? Of course, I start to get perceived as a $2,000 expert. So in order to maintain your value, you have to be careful about how often you give discounts and how steep those discounts are and the reasons for them. Because it's very easy to end up devaluating yourself down to the point where you are considered only to be worth what it is you keep ending up charging. So for negotiation, if you're talking to an organization that doesn't have the cash, even for you, these are a dozen alternatives that you can propose to get paid, or to receive value, to be more precise, because you're not actually getting paid in many of these cases, and maintain your value, even if they don't have the cash. So let's dive right in. I'm going to give you a quick overview. As number one is company benefits rather than money. Some value that your company can provide, either in the goods or services it provides, or in something else your company does. Number two, business contacts. You can provide business contacts rather than money. Or number three, non-business contacts rather than money. That, especially if you're a not-for-profit, but whether you're a not-for-profit or a corporation, if you have contacts that are of value to the expert. And obviously business contacts are always of value. If you have contacts that you can put the expert in front of, that the expert may not be able to get in front of on his or her own, but you can put that expert in front of these people, then that can have value. And now this is particularly powerful for not-for-profits, and we'll get into that when we dive in. So number one, company benefits rather than money. Number two, business contacts rather than money. Number three, non-business contacts. If you're connected particularly to a celebrity or some other person that the expert might like to meet, might like to spend some time with, that can be something that you can offer. Number four, sales rather than money. You can give the expert the opportunity to sell at one or more of the events that you're hosting. And it might be that you're doing some things where no selling is allowed, but that somewhere in the event, somewhere in the mix is an opportunity for the expert to be able to make some sales, and some portion, or maybe even sometimes all of it, could then be credited toward your training fee. Number five, the company buys the expert's products. That you could buy products that the expert produces, if the expert has products. Number 6, the company sells the expert products. Now this can be an interesting and sometimes an ultimate win-win, and we'll talk about that too. Number 7, supporting a cause. If you are a not-for-profit, you might be the cause that the expert supports, or you might be supporting a cause that the expert supports, and the expert's willing to do some work in some way, shape, or form as just being in line with that. Number 8, an in-kind charitable donation received, and there's different ways to structure that. Number 9, an experience. Now this is enormously powerful and can be enormously valuable to an expert, especially if the experience you can provide is one the expert could not purchase. And we'll get into that. I mean, if there's something that I could not or I would not purchase, or if I had the money, say if it's something that costs $10,000 a day, and if I had the money, I still wouldn't do it because it's not worth spending that much money on for me, but I would love to experience it. It's just not worth the money to me. Or if it's something that I couldn't do, that no amount of money could possibly get that. So that's number 9. Number 10, family experience. It's the same thing, but now it's the expert's entire family that can benefit from that. Number 11, a relationship. And number 12, be creative. So let's dive right into these very quickly. Once again, the whole list is company benefits rather than money, business contacts rather than money, non-business contacts rather than money, an opportunity to make sales rather than money, the company to buy the expert's products, the company to sell the expert's products, an in-kind charitable donation, supporting a cause, an in-kind charitable donation receipt if the expert is contributing value to a not-for-profit, an experience, a family experience, a relationship, and then to be creative. So let's dive in and unpack these in a little bit more detail. Company benefits rather than money. Now, what makes company benefits rather than money kind of interesting to consider is that sometimes it's obvious, sometimes not so obvious. Like, I like to work in the hospitality industry. So if I'm doing work for a local resort, I'm doing work for a local resort and they can provide me with a nice suite so I can have a staycation with my family. I mean, that's a company benefit. That's something that they have available, and maybe if nobody's been booking the suite, and so they have a suite available or have a penthouse available or some such, that they could give it to me, and it has value to me, but no one's using it on their side, so it just costs them the cost of housekeeping, basically, and whatever the associated utility costs are. And so it's relatively inexpensive for them, and it has some value to me, and I could do a staycation, and that we could offset that. Now, you have to be careful with company benefits rather than money, because depending how you structure it, it could end up being income to me. So this is especially important if you're the expert receiving company benefits, especially if they have to 1099 you, and you're receiving this and it's part of your income, it's not part of the work. And you can check with your tax professional and see exactly how that has to be done. But say, for instance, if I go do some work at one of our local nice resorts, and as part of their compensation that they're going to actually give me a really nice penthouse suite. Well, if they just give it to me as an extra perk and I can go anytime with my family and just enjoy a vacation, chances are that's going to count as income. And again, check with your tax professional on this. But based upon the rules and regulations right now, that would count as income. And I would have to pay taxes on the fair market value of that. Now, depending upon how they normally discount it or how they might normally give this away, that might affect how much I have to pay taxes on, but it would be taxable income. If, on the other hand, I'm staying there incident to some work I'm doing on the premises. So say, for instance, if at the beginning and end of my time there, say if I'm going from Sunday to Saturday, but on Monday and Friday I'm going to be working with the executive staff, doing some of the training, or doing some of the follow-up, doing some of the evaluation, gathering some of the information that I need, or distributing some of our follow-up survey material. I'll be picking it all up on Friday so I can compile my final survey report, say, some specific amount of time after the initial training. Then it might not be taxable because it would be incident to the job I'm doing on site. And so depending how you structure it, depending how you set it up, to determine whether it's taxable or not. And that's something to run by your tax professional. But whatever the rules happen to be at this particular moment in time that you're doing it, and even if the rules were one thing, say, a few years ago, and the last time you did it, the rules could change. I mean, that's one of the things about tax law, is tax law tends to change. And so you want to keep an eye on that and kind of see how all of that works and what is deductible, what isn't deductible, what counts as income, what doesn't count as income, and of course structure things accordingly. You know, if I'm doing work for a cruise line and they're going to give me a cruise and they're going to give me a nice suite on a cruise ship and I'm not doing any work on the cruise, that could be a great benefit, but I might have to pay taxes on that. If I'm doing work while I'm on the cruise, even if I'm doing work only a little bit percentage-wise for the total cruise, then that could change the tax situation. Now, depending upon what I'm doing and where I'm doing it, I may need to do something, you know, every single day. I may need to do something every other day. I may be able to do something just at the beginning and the end. I mean, with a cruise, it might be different because you can't get off the cruise ship in between. And so if I do some work on a Monday and on a Friday, well, I'm on the ship. But if it's at a resort, well, I could have gone home, unless I'm far enough away from home. And so there's different rules. You want to check with tax professionals to make sure you structure it right, depending upon what you're doing, where you're doing it, and of course what year it is, and what's happened with tax law. But now, company benefits rather than money. For the hospitality sector, it's pretty obvious. But how about the non-hospitality sector? Maybe there's something else your company does that has some value, either directly or indirectly. So for instance, in one case I was working with a client, and the client was one of the largest air conditioning companies in my part of the country. And what would happen from time to time is some of the units would get damaged. You know, typically an employee would drop something, and it was an enormous cost to them. Every once in a while, they could kind of wholesale it out at cost and try to recoup some of the losses, maybe get a couple of $1,000 for it, or $1,200 for it, or something like that. And so they had one of these damaged units. Now, brand new, installed, these units could be worth 12 grand. But because this one was damaged, they weren't going to be able to sell it. And so, you know, sometimes they could return it, or, you know, various things that they could do with it. But it was going to have a cost to him of about $2,000. And if he just gave it to me for what would normally be $2,000, I would have to pay for it in its damaged condition just for him to break even on it. I'd had $2,000 of taxable income because he gave it to me. But the value, if it was undamaged, was $12,000. Well, you know, here's the great thing is, it's a $12,000 value. Because do I really care if there's a dent in the side of the machine? No, I don't care. It's an air conditioner. It's going to be outside anyway. Give it enough time, a baseball's going to hit it, or a rock's going to hit it, or something's going to happen that's going to get dented and dinged anyway. So I don't personally care. Well, here was the challenge we ran into. I didn't need an air conditioning unit. That, you know, whether home or business, I mean, I was already covered. I was good. But I had a relative who could use one. And so as a gift to the relative, I gave the relative this perk. Now, I still had to pay taxes. I had to count it as $2,000 of income because that's what it would cost me to purchase a damaged system like this. But I got a $12,000 gift I was able to give as far as what it would be worth if we got a brand new undamaged one. It worked just as well. And that was a company benefit rather than money. And in that case, it was either they weren't going to be able to sell it at retail, so they're going to have to just try to recoup their losses. When they did that, sometimes they would sell it at cost and install it for free. And so that's essentially what they did for me. And I just continued to work for them. And so it was a great way to get company benefits rather than money. And, you know, I'm always generous with my time. I mean, we have, this is how much time they pay for, but, you know, I always give more. And so be looking for opportunities like that, things that have high value but low cost. Now, something else sometimes you might not think of. Say you have an IT department, and the IT department, and say you have a web development department, could help put together a great computer, maybe a server, maybe a great website for the expert. And you could look at the expert's websites and think, okay, we can do way better than this. We could crank this out in a week. And that this will have value. And you know, we got this expert has 5 different websites, and if we can provide some great websites, and we can do that in-house, we've already got the people, we've got the staff, we've got the templates, we can crank this out. Now, the expert couldn't do it, but we can get the expert, and we can do the service for the expert. Even though that's not our business, we have a department that can do that and be able to produce that. or if you have, an art department, if you have a marketing department, if you have a publicity department, if you have a way to leverage what you do to benefit the expert with things your company does, then that can be of enormous value to the expert and can cost you significantly less than the expert's fees. So that's number one, company benefits rather than money. Business contacts rather than money. Now, this is a particularly big one if you're a not-for-profit. Now, I don't think anyone in here is representing a not-for-profit, but how many people, you're connected to a church or a not-for-profit, or you've ever donated money to a not-for-profit? So, that's pretty much everybody. So when we're looking at a not-for-profit, sometimes not-for-profits don't have a whole lot of money they can pay for experts. Personally, if I'm donating money to a charity and I find out the charity is hiring an expert at $10,000 a day, I might think twice about how much money I'm donating. On the other hand, if I'm donating money and I find out that they hired an expert for $2,000 a day, but it's a $10,000 expert, and they were getting an 80% discount, well, I might not object quite so much. Well, the problem is, of course, as the expert, if I'm discounting 50%, 75, 80, 90% off of my fee, how can I afford to do that? Well, one way is if you can put me in front of business contacts. Now, on some charities, you will have people on your board, or you will have donors. And those donors are potential clients. That those donors or those board members are people who are connected to companies or own companies or executives in companies that might hire me. Well, if I come do a training for your organization, and incident to the training say I'm going to also be a keynote speaker at one of your events, and you can guarantee me that the 5 board members connected to some Fortune 1000 companies will all be there. And so you will put me in front of those people, and that of the 5, say 3 of them have already agreed to meet with me privately to talk to me about what I could do for their company. And so that you've already set up 3 appointments. The other 2, they haven't already agreed, but say, well, let me see what he teaches in his keynote, and let me talk to the people who go through his training, and then we'll see. And then say your top donors are also going to be at this event, and there might be another 5 or 10 top donors that will be represented at the event that may or may not be the owners or the executives, the C-level people, but that they will be representing companies that are potential clients. And so you could be potentially putting me in front of 15 high-value prospects. Well, if you can do something like that, well then of course I'll be more than happy, even just as a pure business decision, to steeply discount my rates. And depending upon the quality of the people you're talking about putting in front of, even if you have 0 budget, I still might be willing to show up and do the keynote speech for free. I still might be willing to show up, especially if I get some clients out of it, do the keynote speech for free. If I get 1 or 2 clients out of it, then I will credit that toward you guys to come do some free work for you. And so it could be a total win-win, and it doesn't cost you any money out of pocket. And it gives me the opportunity to generate business. It gives you the opportunity to get an expensive keynote speaker to show up, to be giving a keynote training, because I tend to do keynote training rather than just keynote stories, and to provide meaningful information without you having to pay for it. And especially if we do the training afterwards, contingent upon whether or not I get any business out of it, and then you can have me volunteering my services, and you can get literally $50,000 or $100,000 of an expert's time without having to write a check for a single dollar. That's possible. Now, try to pay something if you can, if you have it in your budget, but if you literally just do not have it in your budget, this is a way you can try. Another thing is non-business contacts. Now, this isn't going to be, of course, as lucrative for the expert, and so not all experts will go for this, but some of us, and I'm certainly among them, have people we would love to meet. If you have direct ties to Steven Tyler, you have direct ties to Britney Spears, Celine Dion, any number of celebrities, any number of musical artists, especially kind of from my generation, from the 70s or the 80s, that there's a very high chance if you can put me in touch with one of these people, that I would be more than happy to come work at a discounted rate, or depending upon what level of in touch, maybe even for free. For the right celebrities, if you have the capability of setting up that I could take my wife and my family and go hang out at their place. Pop up to Hollywood, pop up to Beverly Hills. Spend a whole day with them at their estate. My kids can go swimming in their pool. If they have a family, that the families can meet and we can go spend some time together. Have lunch poolside at their place and just visit for a while. Well, I might be thrilled to come work for you for free to have that kind of contact, to have that kind of connection, to just have a day like that to give that unique family experience, which of course is number 10. So we'll talk about that again later. But that you might have some of these non-business contacts, that these aren't people that I might seek to get a contract with, but they're great people to meet. Or in my case, because I'm doing leadership, if you have some great leaders, some admirals, generals for me to meet, since I live in San Diego, so we have Marines and we have Navy here. You can give me the opportunity to meet some of these top people that I can have enough of a correspondence with to talk to them. You can put me in touch with business leaders who might possibly be business contacts, but even if they're not business contacts, because they're high-end leaders, that they might also be just a resource to bounce leadership ideas off of. That they could be a member of a mastermind, or we could just even become acquainted with one another's colleagues or friends. Heads of state, whether you're talking your executives in a state in the United States or the head of state is in the president. Now, regardless of what you think about current president and past president, whoever's been president. Right now when I'm recording this, Obama is president. Before Obama, we had Bush. Whether you're a fan of Obama or a fan of Bush, or you hate one, hate the other, hate them both. I don't really care. To me, they're a head of state. And there's a certain level of leadership one has to exhibit as just being a head of state. Whether you like them or not, they're still a head of state. And because I'm an American, it's my head of state. If you could put me in touch with, ambassadors, if you could put me in touch with heads of state, even in foreign countries, high-end political leaders, high-end business leaders, whoever they are, that would be a benefit to me. That would be a value to me, even if it doesn't lead to a contract, even if it doesn't lead to, me making more money directly. Just being able to have this kind of contact, to be able to have these people, in my phone contact list, would be of enormous value just as a leadership instructor, to be able to tap into these resources and bounce some ideas off, even if only for a few hours. And so non-business contacts, celebrity contacts are always big. And number 4, sales rather than money. Now, number 4 is sales. Number 6 is the company sells. So what I mean by the sales is that the expert gets to do sales. The expert gets a chance to sell from the platform or sell in the event. The expert gets a chance to, say if you're doing a business expo and a training, or you're part of a big conference, you're one of the big sponsors of the conference, you can put the expert on the stage at the conference. The expert's allowed to sell from that stage and then come to your company and do training. Things like that where the expert has a chance to make sales. Well, now the sales might not just be like, selling books at a book table. I mean, that's one example. Selling books at the book table, selling an audio program at a book table. That's certainly one possibility, but they have a chance to, say, sell their event if they have a training event. They might have an opportunity to sell their masterminds if they're putting together a mastermind. And so whatever it is, they might have their own live events. They might have a mastermind, 1-year membership that they're looking at building. And if they have an opportunity somewhere in the mix to make that sale, and preferably you want to build a training in after that, because that would be ideal to know what kind of credits you're looking at, that some experts will credit you some percentage of the sales. Maybe 25%, maybe 50%, maybe even 100%, depending upon the nature of the event. And then you can get up to a certain amount of training. The company buys the expert's products. Now this is one of those where you want to be looking at, can you afford to just do both? Because it is especially cool if you have the budget, if you're a big enough organization, and you have the budget to not really try to skimp on the expert's fee. Because the expert has bills to pay too. I mean, I've got a family, I've got an office to support, I've got a home to support. I've got kids in college. I mean, as I'm recording this right now, I've got 1 in middle school, I've got 2 in high school, I've got 1 in college. Well, depending upon what level of education they're going at, I could very easily end up with 3 of them in college at one time, and possibly even all of them in college, depending upon how advanced an education some of the older ones see. So I mean, I've got bills to pay. So if you can afford to both buy the product and pay the fee, please do that. That's really cool if you can afford that. But if you can't, sometimes you can do a bit of a trade-out, a bit of an either-or. You can either pay a fee and ask the expert to throw in the product, or you can buy the products and ask the expert to come do the training for free or for discounted. But where part of this can happen is that, especially if you have like different budgets. Say, we'll take an organization the size of MGM, and we're talking MGM Resorts. MGM Resorts in Las Vegas employs 54,000 people. And say if MGM Resorts said, okay, well, in this separate budget, we have a place where we can purchase resources for our team. So if we purchase 54,000 of your books, will you come do this training for this executive team for free? Well, I might take a look at that and be okay, well, if you're buying 54,000 books in bulk and you're buying it directly from me, not through like Amazon, I might take a look at it and say, okay, that would be worth it to me, especially if you'll pay in advance for the 54,000 books, and I'll come do the training, and and I'd be willing to do that. And of course, MGM Resorts, one would presume they would have that kind of money, but in 2013, right now when I'm recording, this is 2014. So the last year, of course, we have numbers for is last year. The top resorts in Las Vegas lost $1.3 billion. So if they lost $1.3 billion, across all of the top resorts in Las Vegas, do you think maybe they might have an honest need to figure out a way to leverage their budget a little bit? They very well may. And to leverage their budget into things that might help save them money and might help their team perform better, particularly in a way that will keep their clientele coming back. Yes, they might need that too. So while you might look at something like MGM Resorts, they're a huge company, they got tens of thousands of employees, they can afford it. Well, maybe. Maybe they might want to at least try to find a way to leverage this budget a bit better. Number 6, the company sells the expert's products. Now, you could do internal sales. I mean, so say, for instance, if they're getting physical copies of my book, and just for round numbers, we'll say the book's $20. And they're willing to take a selection of my books, say they decide, okay, these 3 of your books would be totally appropriate to our team. How about we'll do some internal marketing, and we'll market all 3 of these books to the team at full retail, and we'll credit 100% of our sales toward your fee. Would that be okay? And that's just doing internal sales. Now, of course, if the company buys it for 54,000 people, how many books is that? 54,000 books per whichever book they're going to get. If they're doing internal sales, well, they're probably not going to get 100% buying them, but they might get some other percentage. And with 3 books, maybe we'll get 20, 30, 50, maybe even 100,000 sales. Who knows? Depends how good the copy is, and depends how ripe the audience is. But the company could buy the expert's products. The company could sell the expert's products. Now, if the company has a network already, so the company has the ability to take an expert's products and put it out there for sale. And especially if I was going to do work with a retail outlet. Like in my particular case, my expertise might be in hospitality, but retail and hospitality have a lot in common. In both retail and hospitality, the very frontline people, the people that have the most direct contact with the clients, tend to be the bottom line people. Tends not to be the supervisors and managers. The supervisors and managers tend to be managing the people who have the direct contact with the clientele. And so as a result of that, it requires a different level of leadership on the frontline people. And most companies don't seem to think about training their entry-level, has 0 direct reports people in leadership. Well, part of it is there's very little in the way of a cohesive 360-degree leadership system. As of me recording this, to my knowledge, no one in the world has a system for 360-degree leadership. In fact, as far as I know, only 2 of us are even talking about leadership in 360 degrees. Now, there's a handful of people out there that are talking about feedback in 360 degrees, but that's different than leadership in 360 degrees. And as far as I know, I'm the only one even talking about 0-point leadership in the double O leadership, the 001 and 002. And diagonal leadership, which is a little bit different than leading down across the net. And so in my particular case, if you're going to be bringing in my products and you're going to be selling my products, there's some pretty unique stuff going on here. And so you could allow me to make the sales. Of course, if there's an event, you could buy the products or you could be selling my products. And if you're selling my products, you could sell it internally, you could sell it externally. And that if I'm, say, doing some work in retail where the 360-degree leadership might apply and they might take a look at some of this, think, well, we have this whole retail system. And because we have this whole retail system, we could sell this guy's products. We could sell his books. And especially, what if it's not even you have a book section? What if you're an actual bookstore? What if Barnes & Noble wants me to come do leadership training for them? And that what they're going to do for leadership is they'll sell my books, and when they've sold enough books, I'll come do leadership training for them. And by the way, I can't imagine that actually occurring. But hey, if you're at Barnes & Noble and you happen to be watching this, I mean, by all means, give my office a call. But you could be selling my products. And depending on the expert and depending what the products are, depending how you market, whether you have a brick and mortar, a physical location, or whether you have an email list, and even if you're a not-for-profit, but you have a substantial donor list and you want to give away my products in exchange for a donation of a certain size, and you're going to credit whatever the donation would pay for my product back to me, for me to come do a training for your not-for-profit, that would be a great option. And what can end up happening is when you're selling the products is you could actually end up making a profit. So say you're going to have me come in and do $50,000 of training. But in the process of that, we make $100,000 selling the product. But that's your profit. And you're going to take $50,000 of that to pay me, and then you still have a $50,000 profit. But you actually end up making money having me come in to do a training, because the profits you made on the product you sold both paid my fee and gave you a profit. How powerful is that? That's enormous. And so that's one thing that you can do that is one of the ultimate win-wins, is you can actually make a profit on an expert coming to you if the expert has product to sell and you can sell the product. And if you're able to sell the product in excess of the fees, then you make a profit. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like books and audios. I mean, if you look at my books and you look at my audios, you might see great opportunity there. It could also be my live events. So if I'm doing a live event that's unrelated to your particular organization, but I decide, there's some skills I have, I want to pass them along. One of them I'm working on right now at this particular moment is turn allergies off. And I'm considering, I haven't actually decided for sure and calendared anything, but I'm considering that, as I do leadership training, I like to use this as an example of inner game, the power of mindset, and that if you can get yourself all set up to kind of run on autopilot toward things, how powerful that can be, and how enormously powerful the effect is, because we can actually make your body stop reacting to a food that up until now it was allergic to. And then all of a sudden it just treats it like it's food. Because why? Because it's food. And say if I do decide to do this event because I don't want this technique to get lost, I want to get it out there, and you can promote it. Now, of course, if I'm promoting it, of course, I'm going to get all the money from the people that I bring in myself. But say if I decide, okay, well, tell you what, if you promote it, I'll give you, 50% credit. 25% credit would be more typical. So say if you're promoting it and you can make, as much as half of the money. And if you're a not-for-profit that I support, I'll probably go at least a 50-50 with you. And by doing this, you get to help people because, they get their allergies turned off, and they learn how to help other people turn off the allergies. And it helps me because it helps me fill up a room or do a bigger event. And so I make more money doing that, and then I just credit you some portion of that, so then you also get training, and it ultimately doesn't cost you anything. That you just tap into your network to help make the sales, and as the sales get made, you get services. You get expert services. You can get an expert that's worth 10 grand a day, 20 grand a day, because you have the network to be able to make the sales. And then you can become an affiliate and also get the benefit of the expert coming and working for you. Number 7, supporting a cause. So if you are a not-for-profit that supports a cause that the expert supports, the expert might be more than happy to come contribute the time and work for you, either sometimes for free, and more often for a steeply discounted rate, because the expert believes in what you're doing. Or you might make contributions to a cause. You might have an associated foundation, and there's other ways to structure that where, say, if I come and I'm going to do a teaching for your foundation, but the affiliated company can send its team over, then that's one way to do it. Some other ways is that if your company, say, has the company benefits rather than money, but instead of giving it to me, especially if it's going to be taxable to me and I might not be using it anyway, but that it is something that you can do, I just don't have a direct use to it. But then you donate that to a charity I personally support. For me right now, it's Quest Xian, Questxian. And if you make the contribution there, say for instance, if I'm working with a cruise company, and they, from time to time, they donate free cruises out to different charities, and we'll tell you what, if some of those is going to the charity that I support, I'll come do some discounted work for you, because I want to be supportive of the charity. And so there's structures for that too, if you're supporting a cause. Number 8, in-kind charitable donation receipt, and you have to be careful of that, because sometimes, like, if I just show up, I do services, I might just be regarded as a volunteer, and even if it might be $10,000 of services, I might not be able to write that off on anything. But if I give you $10,000 product of books and audios, even if it's ebooks and download audios, available for all of your people, then I can probably write that off. And so that's something to run by a tax professional for on both sides. 9, an experience, and 10, a family experience. And we don't want to dwell on these a little bit because these are enormously powerful. And so to get back to this point, 12 alternatives are just paying fees. The dozen alternatives to dollars. You have 1, company benefits rather than money. Number 2, business contacts rather than money. Number 3, non-business contacts rather than money. Number 4, sales rather than money. Number 5, the company buys the expert's products. Number 6, the company sells the expert's products. Number 7, supporting a cause. Number 8, an in-kind charitable donation receipt. And number 9 and 10, an experience and a family experience. And the number 11 is relationship, and of course we'll get to that, and 12 is to be creative. I want to spend some time on an experience. I told you the story in the last lesson about my colleague that went to Australia. That was an experience. To duplicate that experience, to be hosted the way he was hosted, and basically pampered the way he was pampered, he would be willing to go again and make half, maybe even make a third of what he can normally make when he does events here. And it's because of the quality of the experience. So if you can provide an experience for the expert, that can have value. Now if you combine these like with the hosting, so if I'm staying someplace, that can be a nice experience. So when I was in Chicago, that they hosted me at the CEO's mansion. And so we're there in this massive house and massive land, and I didn't actually explore the grounds much. I wandered around most of the house, and it can be a workout just going around the perimeter of the house. And so that was kind of nice. And I'd much rather be in a mansion with access to the kitchen and all of that than be in a hotel room someplace. So that was kind of nice. During the course of the time for part of the experience, because I don't know Chicago, I'm not from there, I don't spend any time there. They took us out to dinner, they took us to a club, and of course they paid for everything at the club so that we could have experiences that had tremendous value to us, and that could have been done in lieu of some of the fee. Now in some cases for a part of an experience, it could be experiences with things that you might just choose to go do with it. So say, for instance, if I'm hosting someone, or even if I might not even be hosting, I'd just be connected to an event in San Diego, and as part of the expert experience, that maybe me and my family will take the expert and the expert's family to the zoo. I mean, San Diego's world famous for the world famous San Diego Zoo. And that would be an experience. If they've never gotten to see a zoo like the San Diego Zoo, and what's fun doing things like that is for someone who lives in San Diego, when I want to go to the zoo, to me, it's just a zoo. I mean, that's the only zoo I go to. I live in San Diego, I go to the San Diego Zoo. But for someone who's never seen a zoo like this is an enormously huge experience. Which then makes it a lot more fun to me because being with a group that is having that much of a wow experience just reminds me of how incredible our zoo is. And so it's kind of a win-win here. Now, suppose that I have a pass to the zoo, and that we're going to pay to take the expert, but I already have a pass for me and my wife, and I have passes for my kids, and so we're all going for free. It's not costing us any money for us to get in. And so in that case, say we could take an entire other family, and it's only costing the organization half of the money because they don't have to pay to take me. So you can see how much of a leveraged experience that can be. Now, in addition to that, remember some of the mealtime things? There's experience time too. So imagine if I get to take an expert to the zoo and say it's a particular expert who I would love to pick their brain. Then I get the whole day with them. Now, if I'm the expert and I'm being taken on something, if you think that I might not be open to having my brain, just ask. And I'll tell you, in my case, so I love to have these conversations. I love to talk about these things. I mean, it energizes me. It gets me excited. So chances are, if you spend an entire day with me doing something like the zoo, or if we do Disneyland, or something in Orlando, or resort stuff around Las Vegas, and you want to kind of pick my brain and basically get thousands of dollars of free coaching and consulting, I'm totally open to that in the middle of an experience. Some of the stuff we experience, besides having this more informal stuff, is what experiences can you offer? I mean, we talked about a cruise, we talked about resorts. Can you give things like if I'm doing work for a resort in Las Vegas? They give me show tickets, they can give me a nice room, they can give me access to the spa. There's all sorts of things that they could toss in there that might be a normal part of the perks, a normal part of the comps, and so it doesn't have to be taxable because this is something they pretty routinely comp to people, and I can have this great experience. Some of the most powerful experiences, the most valuable experiences, the ones that will get an expert's attention, the ones that could get even a high-priced expert they're willing to work for 10 or 20% of their fee, sometimes even free, is an experience money cannot buy. An experience money cannot buy. I've talked about the idea, what if we had a chance to go hang out at Steve Tyler's house? What if we had a chance to go hang out at Britney Spears' house? And we could hang out with her, we could hang out with her boys. Because, her boys and I have boys about the same age, and, they could go play and have a great time, and, and the adults could visit and, just have a chance to connect and talk about things and talk about life. And, if we really hit it off, even build a friendship. That kind of experience, the kind of experience that money cannot purchase the experience, are some of those valuable, powerful leverage tools you might have as an organization. So say right now Britney Spears has a show at Planet Hollywood going on. And if, say, Planet Hollywood decided to hire me, and they wanted to hire me to come work, and they could set up some one-on-one time with me and Britney Spears. And so I would have a chance to sit down and visit with her for a while. And not pitch her, just have a chance to visit with her, talk to her about her life, and talk to her about her performances, and not have it be like an interview, but more of a chat, a visit, kind of share things person to person. Could I buy that? Could I go to Las Vegas and walk up to Planet Hollywood and say, how much for a ticket to go see Britney's show and talk to her for an hour? You can't buy that. Now, if you go to an event where there's a meet and greet, and you can purchase a VIP ticket and get a meet and greet and get a picture, okay, well, that's something that someone could purchase. But especially the ones no one could buy, those are the experiences that are going to be enormously valuable. Another one, like here locally, if someone had a membership to Club 33 at Disneyland, you can't just walk in and say, oh, I want to go to Club 33. You can't do that. So if someone had a membership and they could give me and my family, or even just me and my wife, the experience of Club 33, well, that would be of value to me, because I can't just decide to join it. I mean, no matter how much money I have, there's a waiting list. It's a huge waiting list. And if some company or someone connected to the company had it and could give that as an experience, that would have value. because I can't just go buy that. Now, the other category, besides the category of things people can't buy, is a category of things people wouldn't buy. Now, by what they wouldn't buy means is that even if they had the money, it wouldn't be worth it to them to spend it that way. They would spend it a different way. But it still has that value. So say if I'm doing some work for a local resort. We'll use a local resort as an example. If at one of our local resorts they wanted to give me, one of the penthouse villas, well, I probably honestly would never pay the money if you have a staycation in a penthouse villa, pretty much no matter how much money I had. But that would be an enormous experience for me to get a huge penthouse villa and be able to have my family come stay there. And I'll do some work while we're there, of course. But my family would get this great experience. They could invite some friends over and then just have a great time, have a social gathering, and just have this peak experience to build this tremendous memory, to have this time of their lives, however many days it might be, that they would always be able to remember. That would be of enormous value. Now, would I spend that kind of money to do that at, say, Paradise Point or at the Hotel Del? Probably not. I mean, I would have to have an awful lot of money that I don't know what to do with before I would be likely to spend it that way in town. Now, if I'm traveling, especially out of the country, okay, well, I might. If I have the money, I might spring for something like that. But in particular, though, what I'm talking about is something that's bigger than I would normally get anyway. Not something that's nice for my wife and my kids. I'm talking about something that's so big, so lavish, that I'm going to want to invite some friends over. My kids are going to want to have their friends over. And so things like that where I wouldn't. And if that was part of the offer, I said, well, tell you what, how about if we give this to you, and that while you're doing the training, your family can come and you can enjoy the penthouse villa. Of course, have some friends and stuff over, and we'll do the work in the morning, in the afternoon. We'll give you some credits at the restaurant, and if we do all of that, can you work for just $2,000 a day instead of $10,000 a day? I'd probably, depending upon the local resort, say, heck yeah, are you kidding? And so an experience or a family experience that they can't buy or that they wouldn't buy can be of tremendous leverage in kind of cutting the deal. And so things like that where they can share an experience with their family, they can share an experience with people that are close to them, people that are important to them, even if it doesn't cost you much. It doesn't have to cost you. And it doesn't have to have necessarily all the retail value connected. But it's an experience. So just remember some of those things. If you can give an experience or an experience of the family, and it can, like I said, it doesn't have to be a company experience. It could be, someone in the company has zoo passes. Someone in the company has, they know someone at Disney and can get the kind of a backstage pass sort of thing and get to go see some things that normally people wouldn't be allowed to go see. Anything like that can be an experience, an obvious experiences are the things you have direct access to. If I'm doing work for, say, MGM Resorts in Las Vegas, rooms, suites, shows anywhere in their network. Same thing with any of the other larger kind of networked casinos that have multiple locations. All kinds of opportunities to pay experts and experiences so that they're willing to come work at a steep discount because there's more stuff to the package. And especially the things related to the work that they need to do. When I'm doing leadership work and kind of seeing all the human interactions, it'd be helpful to be backstage and to be able to see all these things. Well, can I buy backstage passes at all of these shows? Of course not. But you could give it to me incident to the work I'm doing to kind of evaluate how things are going and enjoy the show from a perspective that I couldn't buy. So that's 9 and related to 9 to 10. So for the individual expert or for the expert and the entire family. Number 11 is relationship, building relationship. Experts are people. People like relationships. And all things being equal, people like to do business with people that they like. All things not being equal, people still like to do business with people that they like. People like to work for and work with and have come work for them people that they like. That's one of the axioms of 4P360 leadership is to be able to build a culture that builds people up and connects people rather than tears people apart, disconnects and knocks some people down. And so relationship is important in any kind of business. You know, one of the things that sometimes you'll hear me say in my trainings is business may be business, but business people are still people. So business people are still people. Well, people like to connect with people. And when you have a relationship in lieu of paying fees, if right now I'm a $10,000 a day expert, and say 5 or 10 years from now I'm a $25,000 a day expert, but we've had this long-standing relationship. You've had me out to your organization every year. We have great experiences together. My family's met your family. You know what? I'm going to be happy to work for you for a discounted rate. If you called me up and said, you know, Scott, we'd love to have you in. You know, I understand you're charging $25,000 a day now, and we only have $50,000. We'd love to have you for the whole week, though. Can you come work for us for an entire week for $50,000? Well, if I had a long-standing relationship with you, well, heck yeah, I'll be happy to do that for you. And so that's part of the value of relationship. If you build a relationship with an expert when they're so relatively inexpensive, a lot of times you can freeze their fee or at least decrease how quickly it goes up, or they'll be much more willing to be flexible with you than they would without the relationship. Now, by the way, there's two ways to pull off this relationship. One is business to business, and so it's like a corporate to the expert kind of relationship, having them out every year, kind of having this package you give them and the people may rotate. But there's also the human being to human being relationship. So say, for instance, if you're a high-ranking executive at a company, and we build a personal relationship, my family's met your family, we've had experiences together, then you move to a different company. And you call me up and say, well, you know, I'm working over at this new company now. You've never worked for this company before. The budget's not as big as it was at the last company. Would you be able to ... Well, if I know you and I like you and my family likes your family and we all get along, of course I would. Especially as an intro to your new company, I'd love to do that for you. And so relationship can have tremendous power. Besides just human beings love to connect, it can have financial power in a case like this, especially when you're dealing with something that's only likely to get more expensive over time. And number 12 is to be creative. Now, being creative can be as simple as just combining them. You know, you might find 2 or 3 of them you can do. It's entirely possible, say if you're a big company with an associated foundation, and the foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit, that you could offer company benefits rather than money, and connect someone with some business contacts rather than money, and there's some non-business contacts, maybe some celebrities you can connect someone with. There's a place in the series of trainings and events where there's an opportunity to make some sales, that the company can purchase some of the products, can certainly sell some of the products, and that the foundation is connected to supporting causes that the expert is in support of, and that if they go do the work with the foundation and they're donating the books and the programs and some of the materials to the not-for-profit, that they'll get a charitable donation receipt for that, and that while they're there you can provide an experience for the expert, you can provide an experience for their whole family, and build and maintain this relationship. You could do all of them. Or just be creative with the idiosyncratic values that your company or your people in your company have the ability to provide. Now, of course, you know, just keep it moral, legal, ethical, but you know, there's tremendous flexibility here to be creative and to use these dozen ideas of alternatives to just paying fees to get experts that cost more than your budget would normally allow to come work for you because you can provide alternative payments. So this is Scott Conway finishing up the Hiring an Expert set of lessons 1 and 2. So this is the end of number 2. And thank you very much.